Hey, if I start looking weird places while I'm doing this video, I'm sorry. I didn't feel like setting up my tripod, so I've just got my phone sitting up on a little ledge here and I've got it front facing so I can see what I'm doing. Anyway, if I look at weird places while I'm talking, that's why. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching me make the tree. I just didn't feel like getting out the big tree this year. I just didn't have it in me to do the big setup. So I figured, why not do something smaller? And I have this cute little pink feather tree that I've always wanted to do a pastel goth kind of thing with, and decided this was the year I was actually going to do it. So I knew I wanted to do something with the Yule spider slash Christmas spider, whichever one you want to call it. That legend kind of incorporated into my tree, and that's what the spiders are about. I'll put the story down below. I'll go find it and just leave it down there so you guys can check it out if you want. But then I also went into my pantry area and I saw my giant plastic cauldron that I usually keep all my cupcake making supplies in, and I was like, oh my gosh, that would be a perfect base. And then I can do like this Pastel Goth anime looking magical girl thing. So that's how we got the crossover of the Christmas spider or the Yule spider and magical girl. It was just two things I liked that I decided I would like together. So I hope you guys liked it too. Now, coming up, my next video is going to be just a cute gift box, but it's going to look like a treasure chest, and they're really easy to make and just adds a little bit of something besides the paper bags and square boxes underneath the tree. Gives it something more, you know, that extra, and I am all about extra. Anyway, I'll see you guys hopefully this coming weekend. Let me try to stick to a schedule like a responsible person. So we're going to start off with this Dollar Tree serving tray from the party section. I'm going to drill a hole right in the middle of it. I put the sticker in the middle as I was drilling to keep the plastic from cracking. My drill got stuck. And then do a little test fit. Now this is the cauldron I plan to use as a base. Putting the tree in it, the tree was a little too low, so I just found this basket that I turned upside down that raises the base of the tree up to the right level. And then to keep the base from sliding around and therefore the tree from tipping over, I used all of these plastic shopping bags that I haven't taken to be recycled since COVID started. Hey look, they came in handy! Anyway, I'm going to stuff those in there pretty tight to hold everything in place. And then I just want to make sure everything lines up okay. Alright, seems to work pretty good. Now I found some fabric that I like, and I'm going to take my tray here. And since this is concave, you need to cut your circle just a little bit bigger. I'm just going to eyeball it. If you want to be precious about it, go ahead. You can measure, but I'm just eyeballing about an inch bigger than this plate all the way around. And this fabric is thick enough I don't have to really worry about the marker showing through, so I'm just drawing directly onto the back side of it. This is a minky fabric, so it's fuzzy. My advice with cutting fuzzy fabrics is to cut them from the back and try to only cut the backing. Try to cut as few fibers as possible, and you won't get as much of that annoying little shedded hair stuff all over the place. Seems to fit very well. Now we are going to fold it in half and then fold it in half again. And that's going to help us find the center point of it. And then we're just going to nip a little hole right into the center. And again, test fitting because I try to do that every few steps. This is some leftover lace from the witch hat that I did, and I'm just going to use it to trim around the edge of the skirt. Yes, I could sew this on, but I'm trying to be lazy about it because I like to be lazy, so I'm just gonna hot glue it down. Initially, I put the little dab of hot glue on the skirt and then glued the lace to that, but I decided after the first time that I was just going to add the glue to the little like hemmed edge of the lace and then glue that to the skirt. I hope that makes sense. You guys can see what I'm doing, right? Be careful not to burn yourself doing this. Let's see how it looks. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's move on. Now we're gonna make some gloopy drippy things. To start off, you need some parchment paper, and I suggest using one of these bigger glue guns for this, just because you're gonna need a lot of hot glue. The big guns make it easier. Now directly onto the parchment paper, you can see I'm kind of drawing a straight-ish line up the top there, and then just kind of making a drip pattern and making sure to make the drips like thicker at the end, because you know when like goo is running down something, the droplet parts at the end, they're thicker, so you want to kind of mimic that. It's probably easier to just look at what I'm doing. My descriptions aren't always the greatest. Here's a more close-up of what I was doing, and I know my camera's not so great at this, but I think it's still good enough that hopefully it's helpful. Don't be shy with that glue. You want it real thick and you want to really fill it in. You don't want like empty holes in your goo drip. When you're done, you want them to look kind of like this. And hot glue peels right off of parchment paper, so it's really easy to get them off of there. Now I did a bunch of small separate ones, and I'm going to do a long strand of much bigger gloopy drippy things. And here are some of the smaller ones compared to the bigger ones, just so you get an idea of the scale I was working on. And now I'm going to take this acrylic picture frame I got from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to tape a piece of the parchment paper folded over where it's covering the front and back at the top. And I'm going to take my littler pieces and just use a little bit of hot glue to glue them right against the top. And I know you can't really see what I'm doing here, but there you go. I added a bunch more hot glue right across that top beam, and I let it run down the front and the back side of where I have the parchment paper stuck on, so that when I pull off the drippy piece, I have a little kind of like hook or shelf of hot glue. The idea is that you can hang it on tree branches like this. So after you get all your drippy pieces made, you're going to want to paint them. I'm just using some cheap acrylic paint I got from Meyer. I think it's Deco Art is the brand. I got like a pastel purple, a pastel pink, and a pastel kind of tealish blue. I know it looks just plain blue on here, but it's a little bit of a teal color. And for the big drippy strip that I made, I'm just going to, you see I'm kind of doing sections, alternating colors. You're going to have to put on a couple of coats of your base color. And then before it dries, I'm going back through and just kind of blending the edges where two colors come together so it doesn't look like a harsh line between colors. And then I also just painted all the little drips, as you can see here. And now I want these to look liquidy, so I'm adding a clear gloss varnish over the top of this so they look really nice and shiny. And I'm going to do that to all of my drippy pieces. Next up, you're going to need some of this Crayola Model Magic. It's an air dry clay. I'm going to be using one package here. I'm going to be making some tentacles to be coming out of my cauldron. Now you can make these any size you want, but I'm going to start off with making balls about this size, and I'm going to wind up getting 5 of these from one package. And then after you make a ball out of it, you're going to want to roll it out, kind of like, you know, you used to do with Play-Doh worms in school, but you're going to want one end of it to be thinner and the other end to be thicker. So you'll see what I'm doing here. I did that to all 5 of my tentacles, and now I'm kind of, you know, deciding what shapes I want them in. You don't want them just sticking straight out, that would look weird. And then I'm going to take a little, I saved a little leftover piece of clay over here, as you can see, and I'm just gonna roll it into little balls, and they're gonna be fairly small, but not only that, they're going to decrease in size as I make sets of 2 of each basic size. Again, don't be precious with this, don't be too fussy, it's fine if it's not perfect. But as you see, I've got descending size and about enough to cover the length of one of my tentacles. I'm going to decide which side is the tentacle side, and I'm going to stick them on in pairs. Don't mash them down too hard, you just want them to stick. As you work your way towards the tip, you put the smaller and smaller little balls on there. And now I'm going to use these sculpting tools, these little like dotting tools, rounded tools. I have 2 different sizes, a bigger one and a smaller one. The smaller one's not focusing, but it's a smaller one of the same thing. Down towards the bottom with the bigger balls that we stuck on there, I'm just going to push this right into the center of each one of those. And then as I get up towards the smaller little balls that I stuck on there, I'm going to switch over to the smaller tool and do the same thing. You just press it right into the middle. You don't want to flatten out the outside edges, you want it to look like suction cups, like this. And this is a real easy way to do it. So now I'm just going to do this to all of the rest of my tentacles. Now these are kind of thick and it's air dry clay, so it's going to crack, but I'm not too worried about it. I'm just going to like glop paint into the cracks when I paint them, which I'm about to start right here. I'm just using a floral foam block covered with wax paper with some small bamboo skewers in there to hold these up. That way I can paint all the surfaces at once and they can sit up in the air to dry. Just be careful how you balance them on there, because as you take them off to paint them, you don't want your whole thing falling over like you see. I had to put the paint bottle there to stop it from happening. I'm gonna speed this part up, but I'm painting the tentacle side one color, and then on the outside I'm painting another color. So along the strip where the tentacles are, it's blue, and then the outside of the tentacle is purple. And after I get that all painted, I'm gonna come back through just like I did with the drips, and I'm going to kind of blend the edge where the blue and purple meet until I like how it looks. And then I'm just going to do this to all of the tentacles in different colors. Well, different colors using the palette I've decided on. After these dry, I'm going to take some more of that clear gloss varnish and I'm going to give them a good coating because I also want these to look wet and slick. Now here I'm going to show you where I kind of messed up, but this beginning part, go ahead and do this. So I've got just a piece of, flimsy, cheap craft foam. I'm going to fold it over just, maybe about an inch, and that's going to give me this line, and that line is just as a guide. I'm going to cut a bunch of notches going right up to that line. My notches are, I don't know, about a ½ inch apart or so. It's not important. And then I'm just going to cut off the excess that I don't plan to use. And this is why we made the notches, because now we can fold these notches over each other, sort of, and it will help you glue this piece of foam into a circular shape that fits along the front of your cauldron. You'll see what I do right here. Kind of gluing the tabs together. Make them overlap where you need to so that it fits the curvature of the cauldron. Then I cut out a kind of basic drippy shape that I thought looked good. And using just a little bit of hot glue on the inside edge of my glued together pleats, I'm going to glue this. Well, I'm going to decide where I want to glue this, where my front is, and I'm going to just glue this right there onto the front. If you don't use too much hot glue, it peels right off of that hard plastic. So at first I thought I would do something similar, like I would be able to make the drippy looking things doing it this way, but honestly the foam just kept melting and the drips were just too thin and spiderwebby. So I went back to making the drips the same way I did the first round. But I also figured out that if I hold up my parchment paper like this while the hot glue is still hot and liquidy, I get better looking drips. So now I'm going to take my trusty murder scissors and just cut away the excess here because I don't need it. I'm going to leave a little lip so that I can glue this drippy piece I made to the base that I made. And of course, just like the other things, I'm going to paint it and gloss it. And then just hot glue it right onto that piece of craft foam. Try to get it up close to the edge of the cauldron. And now that really long drippy piece I made, I'm going to put hot glue just on both ends of it, just a little bit, just enough to hold it in place. And then I'm going to just wrap it around the front of the cauldron here. And it'll look like goo dripping out of the cauldron, see? Now somehow I deleted the footage of me putting the tentacles on the tray, but all I did was cut them at an angle that they fit on the tray after they were dry, and then hot glued them directly onto the bottom of that tray that the tree skirt is sitting on. And now we're going to fill in the spaces between the tentacles where you can kind of see that pink craft foam still sticking out. I've got these clear iridescent bubble looking beads, and that's what I'm going to be using for this. I'm just going to put hot glue on one side and then glue it right to the foam, and I'm going to glue them in little clusters. And when you're done, you should have something like this. I love the base of this tree so much. I think it might be my favorite part. And now moving on to the ornaments. These are just some Dollar Tree ornaments I got. I have my floral foam and bamboo skewer set up here for the same reason as the tentacles. It just makes it easy to dry. I can paint all the surfaces at once and stick them on here to dry. And I'm just going to use that same acrylic paint that I've been using on everything else. It's going to take a couple of coats to really get them the right colors, but you know. The bigger set of ornaments came with some that were glitter covered, and I'm going to do something a little bit different with those. I'm going to dip them in water. I'm just using my paint water because it doesn't matter. And I'm going to make sure my brush is fairly wet, and I'm just going to kind of tap on some acrylic paint, and then I'm going to kind of blend it all together, and it's going to kind of have a watercolor effect. Now we're going to need to put some of that wax paper under our skewers here, like this, for this next step, because this could get real messy, so you definitely want a drip catcher of some sort. After I get the ornaments the color I want, I'm just going to take the bottles of paint and directly just kind of pour it on like you see me doing here. I'm trying to make sure, you know, I use different color of paint for this drippy part than the color of the ornament. And I'm just going to do that to all of these. And then as far as the glitter covered ones that I did kind of watercolor, I'm going to first put on like a coat of the glossy varnish to use as glue, and then I'm going to add like fancier glitters on top of that. And after everybody has dried, I'm going to go back one more time with my glossy varnish and give everybody a good coating. This is some iridescent streamer stuff that I got from the party section at Dollar Tree that I just thought was really pretty. It was the right colors. I'm going to cut it into about 20-inch lengths. Again, you don't have to be perfect with this measurement either. I just cut the whole spool basically until I had as many lengths as I needed. Well, not the whole spool. I saved some for later, but about 3/4 of the spool is what I used here. And then you just hold it against the blade of your scissors like this with one thumb. You don't have to push down hard, and you pull it like that, and you get a nice curl. Make sure that you put the iridescent side on the outside of that curl though. And this is a package of little bugs that I got from Dollar Tree. I'm getting out just the spiders, and I'm going to paint the top and bottom of all of these spiders in my colors that I have in the acrylic paints. And of course I'm going to add a little bit of, you know, mixy matchy, give them a little bit of print. And this is a big spider I got from Dollar Tree. I'm going to do the same thing to it, just give it a nice coating of acrylic paint. I had to go over these spiders twice to get a good coverage. After the paint was dry, I came back with my hot glue gun and some little crystals, and I just sort of glued those on in patterns I liked on all of my spiders.
So now they're fancy, fancy spiders.
I'm sorry, I'm a dork. But actually, I'm not sorry, I'm a dork. And also from Dollar Tree, just some cheap Christmas hooks. I'm going to kind of fold one end into a little loop like this, and on the back side of my little spiders, I'm just kind of gluing it to their butts there. I'm trying to do it in a way where the post comes out where a web would come out. Like so. This is also from Dollar Tree. It's a tree topper. It lights up. It's cute. The battery's already died on me though, so there's that. I've got 5 of these bamboo skewers, and I'm going to paint them, you know, one for each point of the star. After the paint has dried, I'm going to put just a little glop of hot glue down on my parchment paper, and I'm going to just glue one of the bamboo skewers right there onto that, and now I'm going to use the star as a guide to make sure all of my other skewers line up with the points of my star. This is another one of those things. It might just be easier to see what I'm doing than to have me try to explain it with my bad words. After I've got them all in place, I'm going to go around just a little ways out from the center and kind of string them all together like this. That's just to provide some stability. Make sure you do that small enough to hide it behind the star though. And since this star is like kind of pointy in the center on both sides, I'm going to sand down the back side of it so that it sits a little more flush on these skewers. After I sand it, I'm going to put a big glob of hot glue and just like a little circular pad of this craft foam just to kind of flatten it out a little more and give it a little more surface area to grip onto those skewers. And using the star as a guide when it's placed in the center, I marked on each one of the skewers where the tip of the star hit. Just used a little marker and made a little dot. And now I'm going to use some of my streamer, and I'm going to start by gluing it on one of the little dots that I made that shows me where the star hits, just like this. And then I'm going to twist the streamer, making sure the pretty side's on the outside. And I want it to line up with the next point, but when you pull it, you can see it turns into kind of a little thread, like a iridescent shiny little thread. And I'm just going to work my way all the way around these skewers, gluing the first round down onto the points I marked. And I'm going to do the same thing again, just a little further out. I'm just eyeballing the distances here, and I'm just going to keep doing this over and over until I like it. And as you can see, I left one one set open. That's because that's where it goes down on top of the tree. You don't want spider web in the way of that. Then you make sure you glue this onto the back of your star, and there you have the base of your tree topper. Next, we're going to take the giant spider that we painted and add a generous amount of hot glue to its belly and glue it where its placement is like this on the star. And here you have the whole thing put together. Here it is in normal light without the tree lights on. I wanted you guys to get an idea of what the colors were like and everything, and really get a close-up of all the ornaments and the drippy gloopy things. And then here it is in the dark with it all lit up. I really hope you guys enjoyed this, and I hope you will like and subscribe to my channel and come back for more. Being creative is how I keep my sanity these days, guys. Stay strong out there. Happy holidays.